this is the end of the communication series. So welcome. I'm your girl, Michelle. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been such an interesting series. I think communication is one of those key things in relationships, and I've learned a lot. I can definitely say that there have been times when I've been a passive communicator, times when I've been a passive aggressive communicator, and times when I've been an aggressive communicator. But for the most part, I think I'm predominantly an assertive communicator. And today we're going to be talking about assertive communication. So something I do want to say is that, I mean, at least when I just look at my own life and my own behavior, it's definitely possible to exhibit signs of all four of these. But I do think that as a person, if you know yourself, you might be able to place yourself in a bucket. So I'm sure there's some people who are listening to this who are like, you know what? I'm mostly like a passive aggressive person. Or I'm mostly like a passive person. I hate conflict. I try to avoid it, right? So I think at the end of the day, if you look at yourself and you analyze where you're at, and if you see that you're predominantly in one of the indirect communication style buckets, then this episode is going to be good because it talks about what an assertive communicator looks like. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, the point of communicating is so that people get the message that you're trying to pass on to them and you get the message from them as well. So I think it does make sense to aim to be in the direct style of communicating, right? Where indirect would be the first 3 episodes that we went through. So, having said that, let's talk about what an assertive communication style looks like. So an assertive communicator is able to identify their needs, and they're also able to identify their feelings. And after identifying those, they're able to communicate them clearly to their partner in a way that their partner will understand. It's a very direct way of speaking. So instead of beating around the bush or waiting for someone to pick up from your actions, you're just going to tell them. You're just going to let them know how you feel and whatever your needs are. But the key thing is that you're able to do it in a level-headed way. So unlike the aggressive communicator, you are not doing the most, right? Like you're not being loud about it. You're not shouting. You're just able to say it without being over the top about it. And an advantage of being an assertive communicator versus a passive communicator is that an assertive communicator is able to articulate how they're feeling and what their needs are, right? Compared to the passive communicator who feels some type of way about something that their partner is doing, but they're just suppressing their feelings, or because they're trying to avoid conflict, they're not going to bring it up to their partner. So an assertive communicator is someone who's not going to be afraid of disagreements or afraid of conflict if it's to arise. Like they would be able to deal with conflict if it arises, but they're still able to let somebody know how they feel and what they need. One of the key things about this communication style as well is that you're able to say whatever you want to say to the other person respectfully. So you're still able to respect them as a person, but you're still letting them know what your needs are. So if you have certain boundaries, for example, you're able to communicate them to the person and you're able to make sure that that person does not step over your boundaries and you're also not stepping over their boundaries. Shout out to Mandy because we did a boundaries episode together. Communication is really a dance for 2 people. Well, in this thing, I'm assuming that it's 2 people, like in a relationship or having a conversation. So it takes 2 people to make communication work. So one of the qualities that an assertive communicator would have is that they're a good listener. And what that means is that they're able to let their partner speak uninterrupted and to hear their partner out with the intention of understanding the other side of the story, right? Because I think sometimes when we listen as people, we're listening so that we can rebut, or we're listening so that we can defend ourselves. But being an assertive communicator means that you're listening with the intention to understand for the purpose of resolving the conflict that you might be having in the relationship. So that's it on assertive communication. At the end of the day, it is considered a healthy way of communicating because you're actually letting your feelings get heard and you're not suppressing them. And it's also considered a direct way of communicating because you're using your words and not necessarily your actions to convey the message that you want to convey to your partner. So, last words to people who feel like they're predominantly passive or predominantly passive aggressive or predominantly aggressive. At the end of the day, when you're trying to communicate whatever your feelings are or your needs are, it's important for you to be heard. So I just encourage anyone who is predominantly in those buckets to speak up so that they can be heard. And maybe when it comes to aggressive communicating, it's not that you're not speaking up. It might just be the manner in which you're addressing things whenever, conflicts arises. So it might just be a matter of kind of tweaking the method, tweaking the tone, tweaking, how loud the voice gets, tweaking certain gestures, tweaking the choice of words, so that at the end of the day, when you communicate your message to your partner, they actually hear you. Because I think sometimes what happens is when we're very emotional and maybe like now we're shouting, or like the tone has changed and we're doing all sorts of things. And like I said, guys, I've done it as well. Like, listen, I've done it as well. I think what then happens is the other person automatically shuts down, or the other person is now also just ready to fight, right? So at the end of the day, there's no resolution that happens from there. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this communication style series. Let me know if you're, predominantly like an indirect communicator, what you're doing to get into the direct communication bucket. And if you're a direct communicator and you've been in relationships with people who had an indirect style of communication, what did you do to help yourself out and to help your partner out in those situations? That's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I will catch you in the next episode. Peace. Ndiwe